In this lesson we will take a closer look on the dimensions that are placed on some of the textures. So we can start right away by adding a texture coordinate. So Shift A, input texture coordinate. I will also use two textures, and my goal today is to make like a wooden floor in a simple way. So I will use a wave texture, Shift A, texture, and I get the wave texture in. And that will be the base for my floor. And then I need some noise to make this wooden pattern. So I will add a noise into this as well. So Shift A, texture, and then I take the noise texture in like this. And we can take both into the UV from the texture coordinate. So one UV here and one UV there. And normally most people just take this noise texture and use the factor or the color into the base color. So if I do that as well, take the factor into the base color, go to rendered view, I have noise and everything is fine. But it is not really super fine because we are using 3 dimension here, but we only send in 2 dimension. We send in the X and the Y, or the U and the V from the UV, but we are not using the last dimension. So that is like empty here. And it takes render time for each dimension, and it's also so that if it's unused you can get unpredictable results. So the real way to do this, or the correct way, is to break out the UV and then combine it again, but only using the X and the Y. And that gives some advantages, so I can do it right now. So I press Shift A, converter, and then I use a separate XYZ. And then I use a combine XYZ here, so Shift A again, converter, combine XYZ. Put that in, and I drag from the X to the X and from the Y to the Y, and I have this now. That means if I now change this Z here, I can then do stuff with the 3rd dimension here. So we have 1D, that is one scalar number. We have 2D, which we normally should use together with the UV. And now we're using 3D, which give us space to use this one. And that is the place where I will put in our wave texture. So now we get this pattern here, and if I scale this up a bit and add some detail and roughness to it, and perhaps even some distortion, then I get this pattern that almost looks like the wooden pattern that you have on floors. All I now need to do is to like divide it so we don't get long lines like this, but we get a little wooden tile here, and then a new pattern here, and then a new pattern here, and so on. And since we are using this method, it's very easy for us to just go up and use a 4th dimension to send in that information, so we break this up. And to do that, we add another thing in here, and that will be the vector math snap, because that is the easiest way to just do rectangular shapes, which will be perfect in this case. So I just press Shift A, converter, and go to vector math, and I change this add here into a snap. And in the top I use the UV, and in the bottom I will add some flexibility, so I will add 2 input values and combine XYZ here. So we start with the combine XYZ, so I just drag out and write combine, and then we have combine XYZ. And then I use an input value here, so Shift A, input value like this, and I also add one for the Y, so just copy here, Shift D, and then put that in, and we can put in like 50 here and 5 here just as a starting. We can play with that later on. And if I just drag this into our base color here, everything will be black, because what we need to do here as well is divide this and that in the same way as we normally do, meaning we take divide, so we take 1 divide by whatever we put in, and then we get small amounts here. So we do that. Shift A, converter, math, put that in, change it to divide, and put this to the bottom and put this to 1 here. And then you can see you get small streaks here all the way. So we do the same with the value here. So just copy this one, Shift D, put it in here, and put this to the bottom like that. And then you get some strokes here as well. So now you can see that the tiles will be like in that direction, and you have some narrow tiles here. And it will be even more visible later on. So now we have that in, and what we can do now is that we can add white noise here to get some random into this. So we press Shift A, converter, and texture, and then we go to white noise here in texture. And we use 2D because we use UV here and UV here, so we only use 2 values in, so we should use 2D here and connect that into this. And when we now take the white noise texture out to the base color, then you really see the result here. And we can play with these numbers to get the amount that we feel is okay for, like with a floor. So this will be 1 tile for each of these. And since that now is different values for each tile, we can use that value as an input for the noise texture, because then we get a completely new value for each tile to produce a new noise. So we just take the value out here, put it in here, and take the factor into the base color. So now we have the noise here, and as you can see, we get a completely different pattern on each little tile here. So you have one clear break here where you can see that the veins of the wooden pattern is different between every tile here. So that is a very easy way to do it. And then to make it even more clear that this is wood, then we add some wood color into it. So we take Shift A, color, mix RGB, put the factor into this, and that means that we can put like a base color for the wood here, and then we can have some color map here with different types of color to have some variations. So Shift A, and then I go to converter, use a color ramp, take the value from the white noise in here, and I take the color out here to color 2. And now you can see that we get different patterns here, and we could add some more interesting color into this, so we get something that perhaps looks, I don't know, like this, and doesn't have to be that big difference. So we can take this up so we get the grayscale, or even add more red tone into it. It doesn't matter. It's more that you get different colors in, so you get this pattern. And then it's just to play with some roughness. So we take down that a bit, and we take out some clear coat, so we get like an extra layer at the top of this. And then of course we need some bumps in, so we do that as well. Move this out a bit, and that we just do by pressing Shift A, go to vector and bump, put that to the normal map, or to the normal input of the principle, and then we can take the information we get from the noise out as height on the bump here. And now you can see we get all those veins really visible, and that is because the strength and distance is really high up. So we just take that down a bit, and we take that down a bit like this, and we can also move our light a bit closer so we get it really shiny. So just move that about to something like this so we can see it really like clear like this. We take down that even more, and perhaps also the distance, and we can also increase the scale of the wave a bit. But this is just fine-tuning to make everything look good. And now I have a really strong light here, but as you can see now, we have different tiles, but you can also see that they really break up here with the bumps and with the changes in the veins here. So they are not exactly the same on the tiles, which means that we get random on each of these. So that is how we can do it, and that is how we can use these dimensions. So with some thought behind, then you can expand this a little bit so you get in a random number in more than the W. So you can get in a random number for the input, you can get a random number for the Z-axis if you're not using that, and then you can take the fourth dimension and put in a random number here as well. So then you get like 4 random numbers in that all of them are like used to get a good result here. So with the first one we did all these veins, and then with the fourth dimension of the noise texture we could then add another number to create different noise on each tile here. So it was a little bit about that, and now you know that you should always check these. It could be that you only need one number in. Well, then just use one dimension. If you need to use UV, normally use 2 dimension. If you use like generated in, or you use object in or something like that, then you use 3 dimension. Or if you want to use UV and something else, then you can use 3 dimension. And in our example we use this wave texture for the 3rd dimension, but we also added white noise to get splitting the noise for each tile to get a new pattern for each tile. So in this case we use the 4th dimension. So that is a little bit how you can use the dimension so it really get its optimized use. And I think that was all about the dimension that I will say in this lesson. So I say as usual, we see you in, or I see you in the next one, and I just say bye for now.